I take you now to Webster Tarpley, joining us via video Skype until 5 minutes into the next hour when Catherine Albrecht joins us. Webster, great to have you here.
Thank you, Alex. How you doing?
Good. Give us your analysis on the Iran situation. Is it moving into green light phase?
Well, it may be. We know that the Anglo-Americans, the imperialists, are appalled that their attack on Syria has broken down. It's going nowhere. Their design for this autumn was to have Libya go down, and they've succeeded maybe partially there, but not completely by any means. And now there's the question of Syria, and we know that this is difficult nut to crack for them, because you've got this Russian naval base there at the port of Tartus, and you've got Iran next door, and you've got Hezbollah next door. So the goal is to smash the government of President Assad of Syria using a group of really contemptible NATO puppets. They are the Muslim Brotherhood. They are death squads. They are openly calling. They're having demonstrations in the cities of Syria, to the extent they can get anybody at all on the street, calling for NATO to rain down death and destruction on their own country. Can you imagine a demonstration that says, please, NATO, bomb us. Bomb us now.
Yeah, no, I mean, it'd be like Americans in the streets going, Russia, please bomb America.
It's unbelievable. And basically they're saying, we want civil war, we want NATO bombing, because that's what you get. As Secretary Gates said in a rare moment of candor before he left, the beginning of a no-fly zone is a comprehensive aerial bombardment with thousands and thousands of sorties of the country involved. So this is now the problem. The Anglo-Americans, again, we're talking Obama, Hillary, Panetta. Remember, this country is now being run by the Principles Committee. Panetta, Hillary, General Petraeus.
Be respectful. That's President Obama, Nobel laureate for peace.
But again, the Principles Committee is where the stuff is really happening. Obama, by most accounts, is out of it. He gets his adulation when and where he can, and otherwise he retreats to the family living quarters of the White House and focuses on whatever sports event is on or insulting people in his entourage. The question, therefore, is Panetta, Hillary, General Petraeus, whom I regard as the dominant personality of this clique, along with Donilon, the head of the National Security Council, along with a couple of others, they're running the government. That's the Principles Committee. Now, what will they do? If you attack Syria, Syria has said they will retaliate directly against Israel. And they have very serious means of doing this now. They have heavy-duty, conventionally armed ballistic missiles, at least thought to be conventionally armed. Maybe there's more that would show up on these missiles, and Iran would immediately, therefore, be involved. So this gets to look much more like World War III than the Libyan adventure that we've just seen. Although the Libyan adventure was a stepping stone, the problem for the Anglo-Americans is that they wanted to take Gaddafi out back in March, April, May. They failed. And Gaddafi, with his blocking position, has basically saved everybody else, Algeria and Syria in particular. So this is now the situation. Now, I would say this ruling class, this imperialist ruling elite that we have, are mad as hatters. They're about as crazy can be. They're crazed precisely because their derivatives castle is coming down, right? This huge, monstrous edifice of quadrillions of dollars worth of derivatives. And they're also, I think, aware that their hold on power is now a little bit less firm than it had been before. In particular, I think we have to look at the mass strike. What the experience of recent years shows is that you cannot really organize a movement that can contend for power on the basis of anti-war issues only. You've also got to have economic issues. Now, let me just pull back from the Eastern...
All right, stay there, but I want to go around the world. You've been to Libya recently. I want to look at that what happened there. I want to look at Iran coming up and what will follow that. I want to look then at the economy, what's happening in Greece, what's happening in Europe with Dr. Tarpley, Doctor of History. He's also an economist. I'm Alex Jones, InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com, or donate at InfoWars.com if you can't get on the Money Bomb website. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here live. Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And normally we'd only have 27 minutes left in transmission until this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. But no, my friends. We are going to be here live until 2 p.m. tomorrow. And we're just now getting, because we've been booking people right for the last minute, we're just now up at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com here soon, be able to send out a schedule of who's coming up. But let me just read to you who's coming up. Joel Scalzo was on, Webster Tarpley's on now, Dr. Catherine Albrecht getting into all the internet censorship, the control grid, the spying systems. It's really exploded. George Norrie needs no introduction. He's going to be joining us at CoastToCoastAM.com. David Icke needs no introduction. Mike Adams, Alfred Adask, Tex Mars, the Corbett Report. We've got Springmeyer, Aaron Dykes, Paul Watson, Reeves, a special on Skull and Bones, never before seen information, Gerald Salente, Alan Watt, Jim Mars, Bob Chapman, and more. Dan Dix, the list goes on and on. Great job to the crew, and great job to all the listeners out there who are helping get all this information out to everyone. And, of course, in the run-up to this, we had Jesse Ventura and Dave Mustaine of Megadeth on yesterday. Jesse Ventura said the TSA is setting up martial law, and he's lived under it in the Philippines. He said people ought to riot in the streets if they keep Ron Paul out of a third-party debate. He said he probably would run with Ron Paul if he asked him in a third party. Ron Paul said if he doesn't win the nomination, he may do that. He may run. The question is, will Ventura be involved? Wow. Also, he brought up a bunch of other stuff. That's all at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. Today, the Infowars Moneybomb.com has the main free video stream of this 27-hour TV/radio extravaganza against tyranny. And there's also 3 or 4 backups on there that isn't just our servers, but backups. The Money Bomb site has been up and down a little bit because of massive traffic. And I want to thank all those that are donating right now at InfoWarsMoneyBomb.com. We will have open phones coming up later as well. Okay, getting back to Webster Griffin Tarpley. Webster, looking at all this, again, I'm asking you to make the call. We now learn you were right in 2007 when you said it's been green-lighted the next month. But we now know the green light was taken off. Cheney was countermanded. So was certain elements in Israel. Now you got Netanyahu before the cabinet. You got the media, that hoax 2.5 weeks ago with the Iranian used car salesman in Corpus Christi, Texas. Turned out totally fake, run by Iranian opposition group funded by the CIA. And we saw all these top analysts come out and say it was fake, showing there is some type of power structure struggle going on. Is that enough to derail this? I know they're massing the forces now. I mean, I understand you've got an idea for a movement where Occupy Wall Street is not co-opted. Clearly, they tried to co-opt it, but now they're attacking them nationwide, so that means they were not co-opted fully. I want your political analysis. Do you believe they're about to hit Iran?
Well, the problem with attacking Iran right now that makes it more complicated than it might have been 6 months ago or 8 months ago is that Putin is back. And I think if you go back to 2007, the incident that you're referring to, right? Cheney had been demanding an attack on Syria starting in June. I made this public based really just on analysis, no inside sources, just the pattern of events. By July, I was putting out this newspaper article, Cheney determined to strike in U.S., and then we had the rogue B-52 at the end of August and the beginning of September, which was an attempt by Cheney and the group that he speaks for to hijack a B-52 with 6 nuclear cruise missiles on board, fly that to the Middle East outside of the command and control of the United States, but in the command and control of the Wall Street invisible government, and start a war. So what stopped that? When that B-52 reached the Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana was the concern, I think, about Putin. How would Russia respond? What would they do? Not likely they're going to start World War III, but they would respond in some way that could be very, very painful and uncomfortable for the Anglo-Americans. So this is now a factor. But now we have a new factor. Let's look at the port of Oakland. I believe it's the 5th largest port in the United States. That was shut down yesterday by people who were fighting Wall Street. Now, whatever the particular program is or was not, I recommend a program. The general idea is we don't like the banks, we don't like Wall Street, and this is already a big step forward because, indeed, finance capital is everybody's public enemy number 1. Wall Street is the enemy. So if the port of Oakland is shut down, even for a few hours, suppose other ports were shut down. What does that mean when the ruling class says, are we going to mount a large military operation in the Eastern Mediterranean in the face of a movement that has now shown that it can shut down a port? There are plenty of historical examples for this. Mass strikes can stop foreign wars. You could say the attempt of the Allies after World War I to invade Soviet Russia was stopped by revolutionary ferment, mass strikes with working class demands in countries of Europe and also to some extent in the United States. But now, therefore, we have to see what will Putin say? Will there be some kind of a move by Russia? There's already been the joint Russian-Chinese veto of the U.S.-British attempt to get the attack on Syria approved in some form in the UN Security Council. But that is obviously not enough. The hysteria of the Anglo-Americans is even greater. Now, I have to pull back a little bit and move to another part of the Mediterranean. Now, we got to talk about Greece for a minute. And we've got to talk about Cannes, right? We've got to talk about the G20, right? The heads of every top 20 country in the world are now meeting on the French Riviera, right, the Côte d'Azur. So what's going on here? I think this is really interesting, what's happened in the last couple of days there. And it allows us to see what might be coming inside the United States. Greece, of course, is in financial trouble because it's being attacked by zombie bankers and hedge fund hyenas using credit default swaps and other means, with the help of the ratings agencies, which have to be regarded as an arm of intelligence. In other words, they're an arm of the intelligence community, and what they do is strategically targeted. They're also very corrupt. They do insider trading and all the rest of it. So Greece is in trouble. It is a somewhat artificial crisis, although probably the Greek debt is somewhat larger than it needs to be. But it doesn't need to be this kind of a life and death crisis. Papandreou is the socialist prime minister of Greece, and he's been running this crisis the whole time. He's an agent of the International Monetary Fund. He represents the London and New York and other banks. It is impossible to run class defense when you've got an IMF agent sitting at the top of the so-called progressive coalition. That's what the Greeks actually have. So the Greek labor movement has been wonderful. They've come up with a dozen or maybe 15 general strikes, but they haven't been able to even get Papandreou out, partly because of this stuff. Anarchists have come in and said, no, we want to have general assemblies and facilitators and all the rest of this.
Well, let me stop you there, Webster. Webster Tarpley joining us. I mean, let's look at this here. What's going on with Papandreou saying we're going to have a referendum? We're not. We are. We aren't. Now we aren't. And we know he's a globalist.
Well,
we know he's Goldman Sachs handled. We know that Greece supposedly owes $100 billion, but they need 1.4 trillion, leveraged 3 times, almost to 5 trillion. We know this is all a giant stinking fraud. And then you've got the Vatican saying we need to punish those bankers with the new Bank of the World and giving the bankers more power. And
let's be granular, okay? Let's get into the details on that, because the idea of taxing Wall Street is the obvious thing to do. The question is who gets the money. Now, there's a Delphic version of it.
By the way, they then call that collectivism, but we're all paying tens of trillions in banker bailouts that's stolen. You're saying actually claw back the money from these offshore crooks. And then they say, no, that's not free market. And Rush Limbaugh says, what is free market is giving all your money in banker bailout to them.
The big issue going into this G20 in Cannes was that everybody in Europe, France, Germany, the European Commission, the Pope, you name it, as well as the whole trade union movement, they're demanding a tax on speculation, on speculative turnovers. Now, naturally, since these people are bad, they have a version of this which is not quite the right one. Nevertheless, the idea of bringing this forward is letting a powerful genie out of the bottle, and you can tell that the controlled media, the so-called mainstream media in the United States, never talk about the demand for the Tobin tax, the Wall Street sales tax, the Robin Hood tax, I guess some people call it, not a good term for it, the financial transaction tax. The point is, you put a 1% tax on Wall Street turnover, which is in the quadrillions, and you get trillions of dollars for the public till. That means you don't need genocidal budget cuts. You don't need to kill your own people in the name of a balanced budget that you're not going to get to anyway. But now, the news of the past 6 hours or so, Papandreou had said since my government is about to collapse, I'm going to call for a referendum. I'm going to let the Greeks vote on this. And this was a blackmail referendum because it basically says either you embrace genocidal austerity and years of suffering and grinding poverty and want and misery for the sake of the zombie bankers in Germany and France and Britain and Wall Street, or you're going to be cast into the outer darkness, right? You're going to be kicked out of the euro. You're going to be kicked out of the European Union. And with your drachma will go to zero, and your living standard will also go to zero, because that's what happens.